everything's not okay.
Ashton Kutcher may be making headlines for the horrible letter he wrote in support of Danny Masterson, but there's a secret reason why he actually wrote the letter that he doesn't want anyone to know about. And it's seriously dark and twisted. It all started on February 21st, 2001. Ashton Kutcher had a plan to go on a first date with a 22-year-old fashion student, Ashley Urin. Except that when he showed up for the date, she never came to the door, and what happened next started 20 years of cover-ups and lies. What happened according to Ashton and what happened according to LAPD are two completely different stories, and those lies may just be the reason why Ashton wrote a letter in support of Danny Masterson, because he's getting blackmailed by the Church of Scientology. According to Ashton, when he showed up to Ashley's door, he knocked and twisted the doorknob, but no one ever answered the door. He claims to have seen a red stain on the floor through the window, but he thought that it was a red wine stain. According to his story, he left her house then. And a few hours later, Ashley's roommate discovered her deceased in her bathroom. Someone had stabbed her as she was getting out of the shower. But according to multiple detectives with the LAPD, Ashton didn't actually leave that quickly. LAPD detectives believe that Ashton was actually the first person to find her deceased, and that he entered the house when no one came to the door. But he panicked at the thought of being a suspect in a homicide case, so he left the scene and called his friend Danny Masterson. Together with the Church of Scientology and Ashton's managers, they allegedly came up with a plan to hide that Ashton had been at the scene of the crime. According to the LAPD, Ashton sat in his car outside of Ashley's house for over an hour talking to Danny on the phone and trying to figure out what to do. We all know that the Church of Scientology is known for their cover-ups, so this doesn't exactly come as a surprise, but we actually have confirmation of all of this happening from someone else entirely, Danny's ex-girlfriend Chrissy, who is one of the victims in Danny's case. She was on the phone with Danny and Ashton when all of this happened. According to her, Danny had the phone on speaker and she heard everything. So on the surface, it makes sense why Ashton is supposedly getting blackmailed by the Church of Scientology. They have some pretty insane dirt on him, but when you really dig into it, it actually gets much worse, because these weren't just some small little lies that Ashton told. He actually testified under oath that this is what happened. So he committed perjury, and not only that, but his lies caused someone else to get hurt. The story just keeps getting more and more twisted. Because Ashton lied, they couldn't prosecute the man who they believed ended Ashley's life. The reason is pretty simple, because Ashton had been at the scene of the crime, all because he lied about what happened, and because his DNA was at the scene. This all creates a reasonable doubt that the man who actually ended Ashley's life was guilty. So even though no one actually believes that Ashton Kutcher is the person who committed this crime, all of these inconsistencies would make it nearly impossible to convict the man who actually did it. And because of that, the man who actually committed the crime, Michael Garriolo, walked away free and tried to end another woman's life. In 2008, Michael tried to end the life of Michelle Murphy 7 years after he walked away free because of Ashton Kutcher. Luckily, Michelle was able to fight him off, and when she did, he fled the scene, leaving a trail of his own blood. The DNA in his blood was ultimately matched to the scene of the crime with Ashley's homicide and another woman's, and because of that, he was finally put behind bars for life. But I think we can all agree that none of this should have happened. According to LAPD detectives, they knew that Michael was the culprit after he ended Ashley's life, but they just couldn't prove it because they didn't have DNA, and because they had a reasonable doubt thanks to Ashton Kutcher. So because of Ashton, this man walked away free and ended up harming another woman. She's extremely lucky that her life didn't end like the two victims before her, but Michelle shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. It was entirely avoidable if Ashton had just told the truth. And yes, he may have been a suspect at first, but it would have quickly been proven that he wasn't involved. I mean, how sick and twisted do you have to be to allegedly stumble upon a gruesome crime scene and then be more worried about yourself than you are about the person whose life was just horrifically ended? And that's where the leaders of Scientology come in. Allegedly, they helped Ashton come up with this web of lies while he sat in the driveway at Ashley's house, and they got involved with the LAPD. It's been pretty well documented that Scientology is known for bribing the LAPD, and it seems like that's exactly what happened here, because now years later, it's been alleged that Ashton is getting blackmailed by the Church of Scientology because they're the keepers of his web of lies. And if it ever came out that he lied under oath, he could go to prison prison for up to 4 years in California. Not even to mention that he'd probably get sued by Michelle Murphy because she never would have been in that situation with Michael if Ashton had just told the truth. And that's where Danny Masterson comes in. The Church of Scientology is very focused on his case because it's one of the most high-profile Scientologist trials in years, and it's massively hurting their reputation. And even though Ashton and Mila are friends with Danny, the letters that they wrote in support of him just didn't make sense because Ashton has made it his life's work to fight human trafficking and help people who are in situations like the victims of Danny Masterson. And then you have Mila Kunis, who just starred in a Netflix movie raising awareness about SA. So why would they write letters of support for their friend who committed crimes that go against everything they believe in? The answer lies in Scientology's blackmail of Ashton Kutcher, and it's pretty obvious in the verbiage used in the letters. According to ex-Scientologists, Ashton and Mila's letters were filled with buzzwords and vocabulary used frequently by the Church of Scientology, which suddenly makes everything fall into place that Ashton and Mila didn't actually write the letters, but their hands were forced, unless they wanted the truth about Ashton's lies to come out, because when you think about it, nothing about the letters made any sense. Any sane person would know that writing a letter in support of Danny Masterson after he was found guilty would end your career in the public eye. But then when you take into account that they both do so much charity work helping victims of human trafficking and SA, it just doesn't make sense. Some people are saying that they didn't know that the letters would be made public, but that's pretty standard practice after a high-profile sentencing like this. So I can't imagine that that's true. And now all the puzzle pieces are falling into place, and it's pretty obvious what exactly is happening here. Even though people have questioned whether or not their letters mean that they're Scientologists, I don't think that's actually the case at all. I just think that Ashton made a pretty horrible deal with the Church of Scientology 20 years ago, and he's still paying for that choice today, even at the expense of his own career and reputation. But what do you guys think about all this? Can you believe just how dark and truly twisted this story is? Let me know in the comments below.